My name is Maxine, and at 34 years old, I discovered my father planned my death while I lay unconscious in the ICU. The man who taught me to ride a bike, who walked me down the aisle at my wedding, sat in that sterile hospital room, calculating how many hours until he could claim my $15 million inheritance. I heard every word through the fog of my coma trapped in a body that wouldn't respond. Before I share, I'll share how I turned the tables on him. Tell me where you're watching from. Please like and subscribe. If you believe families should protect each other, not plot against them. Growing up in Palo Alto, California, I thought I had the perfect American dream family. My father, Richard, was everything a daughter could want in a dad. A respected Superior Court judge, he commanded respect in every courtroom he entered. People would stop him on the street to thank him for fair rulings that changed their lives. He coached my soccer team when I was 12, never missing a game despite his demanding schedule. Every Sunday, we'd go for breakfast at the same diner where he'd quiz me on current events and debate politics with the passion of someone who truly believed in justice. My mother passed when I was 16. Lung cancer took her in 8 months despite never smoking a day in her life. Dad held my hand through every chemotherapy session, every sleepless night in the hospital. When she died, he promised her he'd take care of me, that he'd make sure I achieved everything she dreamed for me. For years, he kept that promise. 5 years ago, Dad married Diane. She was everything my mother wasn't. Where Mum had been a pediatric nurse, who wore scrubs and kept her grey hair natural, Diane was a former Miss California runner-up who wouldn't leave the house without full makeup and designer clothes. At 28 years younger than Dad, she was actually closer to my age than his. I tried to be happy for him, telling myself he deserved companionship after years alone. My half-brother Christopher came from Dad's first marriage before he met my mother. At 28, he was the golden child who could do no wrong. While I built my tech company from scratch, working 18-hour days to develop revolutionary medical monitoring software, Christopher bounced between failed ventures funded by Dad's connections. Where I paid my own way through Stanford, Christopher's Harvard MBA somehow materialized despite mediocre grades and no work experience. The inheritance that would destroy our family came from my maternal grandmother, Eleanor. Grandma had invested in Apple and Microsoft in the early days, turning a modest teacher's pension into a fortune. She'd watched Dad's spending habits with concern, especially after Diane entered the picture. So when she passed 3 years ago, her will was specific. The $15 million trust would transfer to me on my 35th birthday, just 6 months away. If something happened to me before then, it would go to my next of kin, which legally meant my father. I'd never paid attention to that clause. Why would I? At 34, I was healthy, successful, and building something meaningful. My company, MedMonitor Solutions, had just secured a contract with 3 major hospitals to implement our patient consciousness detection system. Ironic, considering what was coming. The weeks before my accident, Dad had been different. He'd started asking about my company's valuation, suggesting I should consider selling while the market was hot. He mentioned needing a bridge loan for some investments, just a few $100,000 that he'd pay back within the year. When I offered to help him look over his finances instead, he'd grown cold, saying I didn't trust him after everything he'd done for me. Diane's spending had escalated too. She'd convinced Dad to buy a $8 million mansion in Atherton, along with a vacation home in Aspen. Her Mercedes wasn't enough anymore, she needed a Bentley. The jewelry, the clothes, the constant trips to Switzerland for wellness retreats that cost more than most people's annual salaries. I watched my father, the man who once drove a 10-year-old Honda to set an example about living within your means, transform into someone I barely recognized. The night of March 15th started as a celebration. We'd just landed the Stanford Medical Center contract, our biggest win yet. My team popped champagne in our South San Francisco office, toasting to the 100 lives we hope to save with our consciousness detection algorithms. Jessica, my best friend since college and now CEO of her own biotech firm, hugged me tight and said my mother would be so proud. I left the office at 9:30, rain hammering the windows of my Tesla Model S. Highway 101 was slick with that dangerous first rain of the season that brings all the oil to the surface. I was 5 miles from home when I saw the 18-wheeler jackknifed across 3 lanes. My car's autopilot tried to stop, but the semi behind me couldn't. The impact crushed my Tesla like an aluminum can. The paramedics later told Jessica I was technically dead for 3 minutes. They managed to restart my heart in the ambulance, but the damage was extensive. Traumatic brain injury, internal bleeding, fractured spine, collapsed lung. The life flight helicopter got me to Stanford Medical in 12 minutes, the same hospital that had just signed with my company to detect consciousness in coma patients. When I arrived at the trauma centre, the doctors gave me a 50-50 chance. Dad arrived within the hour, Diane trailing behind in her Louboutins that clicked against the hospital floor like a countdown clock. Christopher flew in from Los Angeles, where he'd been meeting with investors about another sure-thing business opportunity. Dad took charge immediately, the judge in him assuming command. He held my hand in the ICU, tears streaming down his face, as he promised the doctors money was no object, just save his little girl. Diane dabbed at her eyes carefully to avoid smudging her makeup. Christopher paced the hallway, making calls to cancel his meetings. For those first 48 hours, they maintained the perfect vigil. Dad read to me from my favourite books, the same ones he'd read when I was young. He told me about the cases he was working on, asked my unconscious form for advice, like we were having our Sunday breakfast debates. To anyone watching, he was the devoted father destroyed by the possibility of losing his only daughter. But even then, something felt wrong. Through the haze of sedation, I heard him asking the doctors detailed questions about my prognosis. Not the questions of a desperate father, but the calculated queries of someone planning ahead. How long could someone survive in this state? What were the legal requirements for end-of-life decisions? How soon before brain damage became irreversible? My body was broken, but my insurance was excellent. As a successful tech entrepreneur, I'd made sure to have the best coverage money could buy. The initial treatments, the surgeries, the private room, everything was covered. There was no financial burden, no desperate need for money to save me. Or so everyone thought. The first red flag Jessica noticed was when Dad insisted on handling all the medical decisions himself. He produced a medical power of attorney I'd supposedly signed years ago, though I had no memory of it. My actual attorney, Thomas, was turned away at the hospital door, told that only immediate family could visit during this critical time. Yet Dad's personal lawyer seemed to have unlimited access, carrying folders of documents in and out of my room. By the end of the first week, the doctors had stabilized me, but kept me in an induced coma to reduce brain swelling. They told Dad I had a good chance of recovery, with time and proper treatment. That's when everything changed. The devoted father became the calculating executor, though I wouldn't understand that until I woke up to a nightmare worse than any injury. The 7th day after my accident, the doctors began reducing my sedation to assess my neurological function. What they didn't realize, what no one could have known, was that I was experiencing something similar to locked-in syndrome. My consciousness flickered in and out like a bad electrical connection, aware but unable to communicate. I could hear everything, feel the pressure of hands holding mine, sense the presence of people in my room, but my body remained completely unresponsive. At first, I thought the confusion was from the medication. Voices drifted in and out of focus, sometimes clear as glass, other times muffled like I was underwater. But as the days passed, and the sedation continued to decrease, the periods of awareness grew longer and more terrifying. The first conversation I fully comprehended changed everything. Dad was talking to Diane, their voices low but clear in the late-night quiet of the ICU. "Richard, we can't keep this up much longer," Diane said, her voice stripped of its usual sweetness. "The mortgage on the Atherton house is due next week. That's $300,000 we don't have." "I know," Dad replied, and I heard the exhaustion in his voice. Not the exhaustion of a worried father, but of a man drowning in problems. "The firm's been investigating some irregularities in the client trust accounts. If they dig too deep, they'll find where the money really went. Your gambling debts aren't going away either." Vincent called again. "He says $3 million by the end of the month, or he goes public with the photos from the casino. A judge with mob connections won't just lose his bench, Richard. You'll lose everything." I wanted to scream, to move to show them I could hear every damning word. But my body remained still, as stone heart rate steady on the monitors, giving no sign of the storm raging inside my mind. "There's still Christopher's situation," Dad continued. "His lawyer says we can plea bargain the securities fraud charge down to a fine if we pay restitution to the investors. That's another $800,000 minimum. So we're looking at over $4 million in immediate debts." Diane calculated with the cold precision of someone who'd married for money and found the well running dry. "And Maxine's birthday is in 6 months." 5 months and 22 days, Dad corrected. "When that trust transfers to her, $15 million becomes accessible. Enough to solve everything and set us up for life." The silence stretched so long I thought they'd left. Then Diane spoke again, her words chilling me more than any injury could. "What if she doesn't make it to her birthday?" "Don't be ridiculous," Dad said, but there was no conviction in his voice. I'm being practical. The doctors said she might never wake up. Even if she does, she could be a vegetable. Is that any kind of life? And if nature takes its course before her birthday, the trust reverts to next of kin. That's you, Richard. You're talking about my daughter. I'm talking about survival. Yours, mine, Christopher's. Maxine wouldn't want to live like this. She wouldn't want you to lose everything trying to keep her alive in a hospital bed. She was always practical, just like her mother. Don't you dare bring Patricia into this. Patricia's dead, Richard. She's been dead for 18 years. And if she could see what you're facing now, what would she say? Would she want you to go to federal prison? To lose everything you've both worked for? I heard my father's heavy sigh, the sound of a man at the edge of a cliff deciding whether to jump or be pushed. The doctors mentioned an experimental surgery, he said finally. Something about reducing intracranial pressure and repairing the damaged neural pathways. They said it could give her an 80% chance of full recovery. How much? $500,000. Insurance classifies it as experimental, so they won't cover it. We don't have $500,000. Actually, we do. Maxine kept an emergency fund in a separate account. She gave me access years ago in case something happened. There's exactly $500,000 in there. Then why are we even discussing this? Because if we use that money for the surgery and she recovers, we're still facing bankruptcy, disgrace, and possible prison. But if we don't, nature takes its course, the trust passes to you, and everyone wins, including Maxine, who doesn't have to wake up to find her father in federal prison. The next day, Dr. Harrison, the lead neurosurgeon, came to discuss my case with Dad. I was more alert than ever, fighting against the prison of my own body as I listened to them seal my fate. Mr. Winters, I want to be direct with you, Dr. Harrison said. Without the surgery, Maxine has maybe a 30% chance of meaningful recovery. With it, that jumps to 80%. The procedure would need to happen within the next 72 hours for maximum effectiveness. I understand, Dad said, his voice perfectly calibrated to sound torn. It's just the cost is astronomical, and with everything else. I know $500,000 is significant, but surely your daughter's life. Of course. But doctor, I need you to be honest with me. What kind of life would she have, even with the surgery? Would she be herself, or would she be dependent on machines unable to work to live? The surgery has shown remarkable results in similar cases. Most patients return to their previous level of function within 6 months to a year. I see. And without it, we're looking at potentially permanent vegetative state, or more likely complications that could be fatal within weeks. I need time to think to discuss with the family. Of course, but Mr. Winter's time is crucial here. After Dr. Harrison left, Dad sat beside my bed. He picked up my hand, and for a moment I thought maybe I'd misunderstood everything. Maybe the conversation with Diane had been a medication-induced nightmare. I'm so sorry, sweetheart, he whispered, but this is for the best. You wouldn't want to live as a burden. You were always so independent, so strong. This isn't the life you'd choose. He was rewriting my story to justify his choice. The father who'd taught me to never give up was giving up on me when I needed him most. The next morning, Christopher arrived from Los Angeles. Dad took him into the hallway, but their voices carried through the thin walls. Chris, I need you to understand something. Your sister's situation is dire. But the surgery, we can't afford it. And even if we could, the doctors aren't optimistic about her quality of life. Dad, this is Maxine we're talking about. She's a fighter. Sometimes the kindest thing is to stop fighting, to let go. What are you saying? I'm saying that if Maxine passes before her birthday, the trust fund would come to me as next of kin. And son, I haven't been entirely honest about our financial situation. Dad laid out everything. The gambling debts to people who didn't accept bankruptcy as payment, the borrowed client funds he'd meant to replace but couldn't, Christopher's own legal troubles that could destroy his future. By the end, my brother was silent. How much would I get? Christopher finally asked, and my heart shattered completely. $5 million, enough to pay your restitution and start fresh. Maybe fund that app idea you've been developing. And all we have to do is nothing. We let nature take its course. Maxine wouldn't want us to suffer for a lost cause. When the doctor needs a decision about the surgery by tomorrow. If we decline and sign a DNR, they'll make her comfortable and remove life support within 48 hours. That afternoon, Dad met with his lawyer, Bradley, in my room. They thought I was unconscious, but I heard every word of their conspiracy. I've drawn up the DNR order, Bradley said, papers rustling. It just needs Maxine's signature. She can't sign anything. I know. But with the power of attorney and a witness stating she expressed these wishes previously, we can execute it on her behalf. That's fraud. That's pragmatism. Who's going to challenge it? You're her only family withstanding. What about her company, her employees? Without Maxine, the company will fold or be acquired. They'll be too busy finding new jobs to investigate her end-of-life decisions. I heard the scratch of a pen on paper. My own father forging my signature on my death warrant. There's one more thing, Bradley continued. I've reached out to potential buyers for her company assets. The patents alone are worth $20 million. As her next of kin, you'd control those as well. $20 million, plus the 15 from the trust, plus her personal assets, the condo in Palo Alto, her investment portfolio. All told, you're looking at close to $40 million. $40 million, Dad repeated, and I could hear him doing the math. Pay off the debts set up, Christopher, keep Diane happy, and still have more money than he'd ever dreamed of. The DNR goes into effect immediately, Bradley said. I'd suggest having the conversation with the medical team tomorrow morning. Express your anguish, your difficulty with the decision, but ultimately your acceptance of Maxine's wishes. Her wishes, Dad said bitterly. She never expressed any wishes. She did now. See, it's right here in black and white. That night I fought harder than I'd ever fought for anything. I tried to scream, to move, to send any signal that I was still here, still alive, still wanting desperately to survive. But my body remained frozen a tomb for my raging consciousness. The monitors showed stable vitals, giving no indication of the storm inside. To the world, I was a vegetable. To my father, I was already dead. And in 48 hours, I would be actually dead murdered by the man who gave me life, all for money he'd already spent in his mind. The morning after Dad signed my death warrant, Maria started her shift at 6. She was the night nurse, who'd been caring for me since the accident, a woman in her 50s, who'd emigrated from the Philippines and raised 3 kids on her own after her husband died. She had gentle hands and a habit of talking to comatose patients like they could hear her, because as she always said, you never really know. Good morning, Maxine, she said softly, checking my vitals. It's Thursday, March 23rd. The weather's beautiful today. Clear skies after all that rain. She adjusted my IV, checked the monitors, then sat down beside my bed with her coffee. This was her routine, spending her break with patients who had no visitors at that hour. Your father was here late last night with that lawyer again. They seem to be making big decisions. I hope they're doing right by you, sweetheart. As she spoke, something different happened. My eyes, which had remained still throughout my coma, moved, just slightly tracking the sound of her voice. Maria, experienced after 30 years of nursing, noticed immediately. Maxine, can you hear me? My eyes moved again, more deliberately this time, right to left, following her movement as she stood up. Oh my God, she whispered. She grabbed her penlight, shining it in my eyes. My pupils responded normally, but more than that, they focused on her face. Sweetheart, if you can hear me, if you understand, try to look up. With every ounce of strength I had, I forced my eyes upward. It took several seconds, but they moved. Maria's hands shook as she grabbed my chart, looking at the previous assessments. No one had documented any purposeful eye movement. She glanced at the door, then back at me. Maxine, this is important. Can you blink once for yes, twice for no? I concentrated harder than I'd ever concentrated on anything, forcing my eyelids closed and open. Once. You can hear me. You've been aware. It wasn't a question. She'd seen enough locked-in patients to recognize the signs. How long were you aware yesterday? 1 blink. The day before, 1 blink. Oh, sweetheart, you've heard everything, haven't you? 1 blink, and somehow she must have seen the desperation in my eyes, because her face went pale. Is something wrong? Are you in pain? 2 blinks. Are you scared? 1 long, deliberate blink. Maria pulled her chair closer, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Is it about your medical care? About decisions being made? 1 blink. The DNR. You know about the DNR. 1 blink. Did you agree to it? 2 blinks. 2 desperate, terrified blinks. Maria stood up so fast her coffee spilled across the floor. She looked at the door again, then at the cameras in the corner of the room, then back at me. I'm going to help you, she whispered, but I need to be careful. Your father has power here. Give me time to figure this out. She spent the next hour performing what looked like routine care, but was actually a detailed neurological assessment. She tested my eye movements in every direction, established a more complex communication system using eye movements and blinks, and documented everything in her personal notebook, not the official chart. "Your brain function is intact," she said quietly. "You're locked in, but you're completely aware. This changes everything about your case." That afternoon, Jessica came to visit during her lunch break. She'd been coming every day, though Dad had limited her visits to 30 minutes. Maria intercepted her in the hallway. "You're Maxine's friend, the one who runs the biotech company." "Yes, Jessica Chen. Wait, no, Jessica Liu." She caught herself flustered. "Sorry, I'm just worried about her. I need to speak with you privately." "It's about Maxine. It's urgent." They met in the hospital cafeteria, Maria choosing a corner table away from everyone else. "I've been Maxine's nurse since she arrived," Maria began carefully. "I need you to understand that what I'm about to tell you could cost me my job, maybe my license." "What's wrong?" "Maxine is conscious. She's been conscious for days. She can hear everything, understand everything, but she can't move or speak. It's called locked-in syndrome." Jessica's coffee cup crashed to the floor. "What?" "But her father said the doctors confirmed she was brain dead." "She's not. I tested her this morning. She responds to questions through eye movements. And Miss Liu, she knows about the DNR. She didn't consent to it." "That son of a bitch," Jessica breathed. "I knew something was wrong. He's been acting strange, keeping everyone away, bringing his lawyer around constantly. There's more. I heard him talking about some surgery that could save her, but he told the medical team they couldn't afford it. Is that true? Jessica pulled out her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. "Maxine has a $500,000 emergency fund. She told me about it last year. Her father has access to—" "Oh my God. What?" "He withdrew it all, yesterday, the entire $500,000, the same day he signed the DNR. Maria's face went hard. "So he has the money for the surgery. He has the money and he's choosing to let her die. When are they planning to—" "Tomorrow morning. They're removing life support tomorrow at 10. We need a lawyer, now." Jessica called Thomas Maxine's personal attorney, who'd been blocked from seeing her. He answered on the first ring. "Thomas, it's Jessica. Maxine's awake. She's locked in but conscious, and Richard is trying to kill her." "Slow down. What do you mean she's awake?" Jessica put him on speaker, and Maria explained everything. The eye movements, the communication system, the DNR. Maxine didn't consent to the money for the surgery that mysteriously disappeared. "This is attempted murder," Thomas said flatly. "I'll file for an emergency injunction immediately, but I need proof. The court won't just take our word against a respected judge." "What kind of proof?" Maria asked. "Documentation of her consciousness, video if possible, and any evidence that Richard knows she's aware and is proceeding anyway." "I can do that," Maria said. "I'll record everything tonight, but we need to be careful. If Richard finds out—" "He won't," Jessica said firmly. "Maria, what time does your shift end?" 7 a.m. The life support is scheduled to be removed at 10. So we have a 3-hour window. Thomas, can you get a judge to sign an injunction that fast? The emergency judge tomorrow is Harold Kingston. He and Richard go way back. He won't sign anything against him without ironclad proof." "Then we need another plan," Jessica said. She was quiet for a moment, then her eyes lit up. "Maxine's company has been working on consciousness detection technology, the Stanford medical contract. They have the equipment here. How does that help us? If we can get her hooked up to her own system, it will provide medical proof of consciousness that no judge could ignore. It's FDA approved, admissible in court." "But who would authorize that test?" Thomas asked. "Dr. Harrison might," Maria said slowly. "He's been uncomfortable with the rush to withdraw support. If I approach him with evidence—" "Do it," Jessica said. "Meanwhile, I'm going to do some digging of my own. Richard's gambling debts, the money troubles there, has to be a paper trail." "Be careful," Thomas warned. "Richard Winters isn't just any father. He's a judge with connections. If he realizes we're on to him, then we better make sure he doesn't realize until it's too late," Jessica said. That night, Maria began her documentation. She brought a small camera, hiding it among the medical supplies. She waited until the ICU was quiet, then began. "Maxine, it's Maria. I'm going to record our conversation for your protection. Is that okay? 1 blink for yes. Can you confirm your name by blinking the number of letters MAXINE is 6 letters? 6 deliberate blinks. Do you want the surgery that could save your life? 1 blink. Did you ever tell your father you wanted to be removed from life support? 2 blinks. Do you believe your father is trying to harm you? A long pause, then one slow, sad blink. Maria had to stop recording to wipe her eyes. She'd seen a lot in 30 years of nursing, but a father trying to murder his daughter for money was a new low. Around midnight, Richard arrived with Diane. Maria quickly pretended to be adjusting equipment. "How is she?" Richard asked, not looking at Maxine but at the monitors. "Stable, Mr. Winters." "Good, good. We want her comfortable for tomorrow." Diane was carrying a bottle of champagne poorly concealed in her oversized purse. "Richard, should we—" "Not here," he said sharply, then softer, "tomorrow night, after everything is settled." They stood by Maxine's bed for exactly 5 minutes, Richard playing the grieving father perfectly. He even squeezed out a few tears. "Daddy loves you, sweetheart," he said to Maxine. "This is for the best. You're going to a better place with Mommy." Maria watched Maxine's eyes track her father's movement, saw the way they narrowed slightly, the only sign of the rage she must be feeling. After they left, Maria resumed recording. "Did you hear your father just now?" 1 blink. "He mentioned your mother. Did your mother die naturally?" For the first time, Maxine blinked 3 times their code for "I don't know." Maria made a note. "One more thing to investigate. Dr. Harrison arrived at 5 a.m. for early rounds." Maria intercepted him with her evidence, showing him the videos on her phone. "Doctor, you need to see this." He watched in growing horror as the truth became clear. A conscious patient aware of everything about to be removed from life support against her will. This is impossible. The neurological assessments showed. Did you perform them yourself? No, Dr. Coleman did. He's Richard's golf buddy. Doctor, we have 5 hours before they kill her. Will you help? Dr. Harrison straightened his shoulders. Get her to OR 3. We're doing that surgery right now. But the consent forms. A conscious patient can consent through eye blinks. It's been legally upheld. Maria, you witness. I'll get the surgical team. What about Mr. Winters? What about him? He's not the patient. She is, Dr. Harrison tried to move Maxine to surgery, but the hospital's legal team blocked him within minutes of the transfer order. Richard had been notified immediately and arrived at the hospital with Bradley and 2 security guards by 5:45 a.m. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Richard demanded, cornering Dr. Harrison in the hallway. "My job. Saving a patient who wants to be saved. My daughter is in a vegetative state. She can't want anything. Actually, Mr. Winters, we have evidence that Maxine is conscious and responding to commands." Richard's face went white, then red. "That's impossible. Dr. Coleman confirmed brain death patterns." "Dr. Coleman was wrong. I've examined her myself. She's locked in but fully aware." "I don't believe you. And even if it were true, I have medical power of attorney. I make the decisions. Not if those decisions constitute attempted murder." The word hung in the air like a loaded gun. Richard stepped closer to Dr. Harrison, his voice dropping to a threat. "Be very careful what you say next, Doctor. I've been practicing law since before you were in medical school. You accuse me of something like that without proof, I'll bury you." That's when Jessica arrived with Thomas and someone unexpected, FBI Special Agent Diana Foster. "Mr. Winters," Agent Foster said, showing her badge, "I need you to come with me." "This is ridiculous. On what grounds?" "Embezzlement of client trust funds, wire fraud conspiracy to commit murder, and about 12 other federal charges. We've been investigating you for 6 months. Your daughter's situation just accelerated our timeline. You have no proof of anything." Jessica held up a folder. $3 million in gambling debts to Vincent Torino, a known associate of organized crime. $4.5 million stolen from client trust accounts over the past 2 years. Your son Christopher's securities fraud that you helped orchestrate. And as of yesterday, $500,000 withdrawn from your daughter's emergency fund, while simultaneously refusing to pay for life-saving surgery. That money was for family expenses. The withdrawal was made 6 hours after you signed a DNR order for a conscious patient, Agent Foster said. "We have the bank records and the hospital documentation. Your own text messages to your wife about celebrating with champagne once your daughter was dead." Richard turned to Bradley. "Do something." Bradley stepped back, hands raised. "I'm not touching this, Richard. Federal crime isn't my jurisdiction. Additionally," Thomas added, "I've filed an emergency injunction with Federal Judge Patricia Lim. She has no connection to you, Richard. She's already reviewed the evidence and issued a stay on the DNR. Maxine is now under federal protection as a witness and victim." Richard lunged at Jessica. "You little bitch! You destroyed me. Yes, yes, Susan. Agent Foster's team restrained him immediately. As they cuffed him, Diane tried to slip away but was stopped by another agent. Mrs. Winters, we need to talk to you as well. I don't know anything about this, Diane said quickly. Richard handled all the finances. Jessica played a recording on her phone. Diane's voice filled the hallway. If nature takes its course before her birthday, the trust reverts to next of kin. That's you, Richard. You recorded me, Diane shrieked. Maria recorded you. Every conversation you had in that room thinking my best friend couldn't hear you. Christopher arrived just as his father was being led away. He took in the scene the FBI agents, his father in handcuffs, and made a decision that surprised everyone. I want to make a deal, he said to Agent Foster. I'll testify about everything. The fraud, the gambling, the plan to kill my sister. All of it. Chris, Richard said, his voice breaking. Son, please. You were going to kill her dad, my sister, for money. Mum would be disgusted. Your mother is dead. Yeah, and now I'm wondering if that was really an accident. As the FBI led Richard away, Dr. Harrison turned to Maria. Let's get Maxine to surgery, now. But I had waited so long, fought so hard that my body was failing. My blood pressure dropped suddenly, alarms screaming. The medical team rushed me to the OR, not for the planned surgery, but for emergency intervention. She's crashing, someone yelled. Get her on bypass now. The next 12 hours were a blur of medical procedures I learned about later. The surgery that was supposed to take 6 hours took 14. 3 times they almost lost me. 3 times I fought my way back, driven by pure rage and determination to survive. Jessica stayed the entire time pacing the waiting room. Maria, off shift but refusing to leave, prayed in the chapel. Thomas fielded calls from reporters who'd gotten wind of the story. Christopher sat in a corner writing out his confession for the FBI. The news broke while I was still in surgery. Respected judge arrested for attempting to murder daughter for inheritance. The headlines were brutal, but nothing compared to the truth. When Dr. Harrison finally emerged from the OR, he looked exhausted but hopeful. She made it. It was touch and go, but Maxine is a fighter. The surgery was successful. When will she wake up? Jessica asked. That's up to her. Could be hours, could be days. But her brain function is intact. When she wakes up, she should be able to speak, to move. It will take time and therapy, but she'll recover. What Dr. Harrison didn't say, what he told me later, was that during the surgery, they'd found evidence of an earlier brain injury partially healed. An injury consistent with blunt force trauma from about 18 years ago, right around the time my mother died in her car accident. As I lay in recovery, my father sat in a federal holding cell, his bail denied due to flight risk. The champagne Diane had brought to celebrate my death was entered into evidence. The woman who'd helped plan my murder was already trying to cut a deal offering to testify against the man she'd married for money. But I didn't know any of that yet. I was fighting my way back to consciousness, one breath at a time, driven by the need to speak the truth I'd been unable to voice while locked in my own body. When my eyes finally opened 2 days later, the first face I saw was Maria's. She was holding my hand, tears streaming down her face. "Welcome back, sweetheart," she said. "You're safe now." I tried to speak, but my throat was raw from the ventilator. She gave me ice chips and waited patiently as I formed the words I'd been desperate to say. "I heard everything," I whispered. "I know, honey, and everyone else knows now too. Your father can't hurt you anymore." "Kink, he killed her," I said, though I couldn't prove it yet. "He killed my mother." Maria squeezed my hand. "We'll find the truth. But right now you need to rest. You've got a long recovery ahead." Recovery. The word seemed too small for what I faced. Not just physical healing, but the emotional devastation of knowing my father had tried to murder me, that my brother had been willing to let it happen, that the man who raised me valued money more than my life. But I was alive. Against all odds, despite my father's best efforts, I was alive. And now it was time to fight back. The recovery ward at Stanford Medical became my new battlefield. Every day was a war against my own body muscles that had atrophied neural pathways that needed to rebuild. The physical therapy was torture, but nothing compared to the emotional damage of processing what had happened. Jessica had essentially moved into my hospital room, running her company from her laptop while supervising my care. She'd hired private security after learning about my father's connections to organised crime through his gambling debts. 2 former Marines took shifts outside my door because even from federal custody, Richard Winters had reach. 3 weeks after waking up, I could finally walk with a walker. That's when FBI agent Foster came to take my official statement. She brought a court reporter and video equipment, warning me this would be used in the trial. "Start from the beginning," she said. "What do you remember from the coma?" I told them everything. Every conversation, every betrayal, every moment of terror as I lay trapped in my body listening to my father plan my death. The court reporter had to stop several times, too overwhelmed by the horror of what she was transcribing. "Your father's lawyer is claiming you couldn't have been conscious," Agent Foster said, "that this is all fabricated." "Then explain this," I said, and recited word-for-word conversations that had been secretly recorded by Maria. Details only someone present could know. The exact amount of Christopher's securities fraud, the name of my father's bookie, Diane's comment about her Aspen wellness retreat. "There's something else," I said. "My mother's death. I think he killed her too." Agent Foster leaned forward. "What makes you say that?" "During the surgery, they found evidence of an old brain injury from around the time she died. And when he was planning to kill me, Diane said something about how Mom would understand. Dad shut her down fast, but there was something in his voice. We'll look into it. The case file from your mother's accident should still exist." While I focused on recovery, the legal machinery ground forward. Dad's assets were frozen by the FBI. The house in Atherton, the Aspen property, all the luxury cars, everything purchased with stolen money was seized. Diane, finding herself suddenly poor, fled to her mother's house in Bakersfield and started selling stories to tabloids. Christopher surprised everyone by fully cooperating. He provided the FBI with recordings he'd secretly made of Dad over the years, insurance against being thrown under the bus. The recordings revealed a pattern of fraud going back decades. "I always knew he was dirty," Christopher told me during one of his visits, "but I thought it was just small stuff, white-collar crime. I never thought he'd actually try to kill someone. But you were willing to let me die for $5 million. He couldn't meet my eyes. I was high when I agreed to that, cocaine. Been using for years to deal with the pressure of being his son. I'm in rehab now. I know that doesn't excuse it, but I want you to know I'm trying to change. Why should I believe you? Because I'm testifying against him. Full immunity deal in exchange for everything I know. And Maxine, there's so much you don't know. Dad's been stealing from clients for 20 years. He's got accounts in the Caymans, shell companies, the works." The media attention was relentless. Every news outlet wanted my story. Jessica fielded hundreds of interview requests, turning them all down while I focused on healing. But the story had taken on a life of its own. Other victims of my father's crimes came forward. Families who'd trusted him with estate planning only to find money missing. Defendants who'd paid him under the table for favourable rulings. 6 weeks after surgery, I was strong enough to visit my company. MedMonitor Solutions had survived without me thanks to my incredible team. They'd refused all buyout offers, believing I'd come back. When I walked through the door, supported by a cane, but walking on my own, the entire office erupted in celebration. "The Stanford contract is still waiting for you," my CTO told me. "In fact, they want to expand it. Your story has made everyone realize how important consciousness detection technology is." It was bitterly ironic. The technology I'd developed had helped save my life, proving my consciousness when my own father tried to claim I was brain dead. Now hospitals nationwide wanted our system. 3 months into recovery, Agent Foster called with news. "We've reopened your mother's case. You were right. The accident wasn't an accident." I sat down hard, even though I'd suspected it. "How?" "Her car's brake lines were cut. The original investigation missed it because your father was the one who identified her body and pushed for quick cremation. But a mechanic who worked on the car came forward after seeing the news. He'd always thought something was off, but was too scared of your father to say anything. So he killed her. We can't prove he cut the brake lines himself, but the circumstantial evidence is strong. She had a $2 million life insurance policy. He was the sole beneficiary. The money went to pay off his debts at the time. My God, how long has he been a monster? Based on what we're finding, probably his whole life. He just got better at hiding it." The trial was set for 6 months after my surgery. By then I could walk without assistance, though I still had physical therapy twice a week. My speech was perfect, my mind sharp. I was ready to face him. The courthouse was packed the day I testified. I wore the same black suit I'd worn to my mother's funeral, a deliberate choice. Dad sat at the defense table, looking smaller than I remembered his orange jumpsuit replacing his judge's robes. "State your name for the record," the prosecutor began. "Maxine Elizabeth Winters." "Ms. Winters, can you tell the court about March 15th of this year?" I told them everything. The accident, the coma, the consciousness that remained while my body couldn't respond. I described every conversation I'd heard, every betrayal I'd endured. When I got to the part about Dad signing the DNR, while I was aware and listening, several jurors were crying. "Did you ever express any wish to be removed from life support?" the prosecutor asked. "Never. I wanted to live. I was screaming inside my mind for someone to help me. And your father knew about the surgery that could save you. He had the money for it. He chose to let me die instead." The defense attorney tried to shake my testimony, suggesting I'd imagined things that locked-in syndrome meant I couldn't have clear memories. But I recited conversations verbatim backed up by Maria's recordings. I knew details that destroyed every argument he made. "Isn't it true you're angry at your father?" he asked. "Yes," I said simply. "He tried to murder me for money. He killed my mother for money. I'm angry that I ever called him Dad." Richard tried to catch my eye as I left the stand, but I looked straight ahead. He wasn't my father anymore. He was just another criminal who'd gambled with lives and lost. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. Conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, embezzlement, wire fraud, money laundering, and 16 other federal charges. The sentence was 25 years to life, with no possibility of parole for 15 years. As they led him away, he called out to me, "Maxine, please. I'm still your father." I turned to face him one last time. "My father died the day he signed that DNR. You're just the man who killed him. Diane got 5 years for conspiracy, out in 3 with good behavior. She served 18 months before marrying another wealthy older man. He died within a year under suspicious circumstances. She's currently under investigation again. Christopher served no jail time due to his cooperation. He went through rehab, got clean, and started working as an addiction counselor. We meet for coffee once a month, slowly rebuilding something that might someday resemble a sibling relationship. The inheritance from my grandmother came through on my 35th birthday, right on schedule, but it felt hollow, knowing what it had cost. I used $5 million to establish the Patricia Winters Foundation for coma patients, funding research and providing advocates for patients who couldn't speak for themselves. Maria retired from hospital nursing and now runs the foundation's patient advocacy program. She saved 12 patients from premature life support removal in the first year alone. Jessica and I grew even closer through the ordeal. She was my maid of honor when I married Daniel, a prosecutor I met during the trial, someone who understood what justice meant and would never betray my trust. My company went public 2 years after the trial, valued at $100 million. Dad read about it in the prison newspaper. He wrote me a letter claiming credit for my success, saying his tough love made me strong. I had my lawyer send him a cease and desist order. He's not allowed to contact me again. The investigation into my mother's death continues, but without physical evidence, prosecutors can't bring murder charges. It doesn't matter. He's already serving life for trying to kill me. Justice doesn't always come in the form we expect. 2 years have passed since I testified against my father. I'm 36 now, sitting in the office of Med Monitor Solutions, looking out at the San Francisco Bay. My body has healed completely, though I still have nightmares sometimes. I wake up frozen, unable to move, trapped again in that hospital bed. Daniel holds me until the panic passes, reminding me I'm safe, I'm alive, I survived. The foundation has grown beyond anything I imagined. We've partnered with hospitals nationwide to implement protocols that protect locked-in patients. Maxine's Law, as the media calls it, requires multiple independent neurological assessments before any DNR order can be executed. It's saved 43 lives so far. I received a call from the federal prison last month. Dad had suffered a stroke. He was partially paralyzed, unable to speak clearly, dependent on others for basic care. The prison doctor said he was aware, but couldn't communicate effectively, locked in his own body in a different way. "He's asking for you," the doctor said, blinking repeatedly when we mention your name. I thought about it for 3 days. Jessica said I didn't owe him anything. Daniel said it was my choice. Maria said forgiveness was for my peace, not his. In the end, I went. Not for him, but for me. The prison medical ward was depressing fluorescent lights flickering over linoleum floors. Dad lay in a narrow bed, one side of his face drooping, his eyes tracking my movement as I entered. "Hello, Richard," I said, not calling him Dad. He blinked rapidly, his good hand twitching toward me. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. He was now experiencing a version of what he'd put me through, aware but unable to fully communicate, dependent on others who might not have his best interests at heart. "I'm not here to forgive you," I said clearly. I'm here to tell you that I'm happy, I'm successful, I'm loved. Everything you tried to take from me, I've built back stronger." His eyes filled with tears. His mouth worked trying to form words. Only garbled sounds came out. "The doctors say you might recover some function with therapy," I continued. "The prison will provide basic care, nothing more. You have no money for better treatment, no one to advocate for you, no one who cares if you live or die." I pulled out a folder from my bag. "This is a DNR order. If you go into cardiac arrest, if you have another stroke, they won't resuscitate you. All it needs is my signature as your next of kin. Ironic, isn't it?" His good hand moved frantically, his eyes wide with fear. "This is what you did to me, this exact feeling of helpless terror, except you were going to sign it. You were going to murder me." I held the paper up, then slowly, deliberately tore it in half. "But I'm not you. I'm not a monster. I won't sign it. You'll get the same care as any other prisoner, no more, no less. You'll live with your choices, however long that is." I stood to leave, then turned back one more time. "Mum would be ashamed of what you became, but she would be proud of who I've become, despite you." He died alone 3 years later on a random Tuesday in November. The prison called to inform me, asking about funeral arrangements. I had him cremated, no service, no marker. His ashes were scattered in the prison cemetery with the other unclaimed remains. Christopher didn't attend, neither did I. Diane died 2 years after that, mysteriously falling from her 4th husband's yacht. The investigation is ongoing, but everyone knows she finally met someone worse than her. Christopher just celebrated 5 years sober. He works with families affected by white-collar crime, using his story as a cautionary tale. We had Thanksgiving together last year, the first holiday we'd shared since everything happened. It was awkward, but healing. My daughter was born on my mother's birthday, Patricia Marie, after the grandmother she'll never meet, but whose memory lives on through the foundation. When she's old enough, I'll tell her the story. Not to frighten her, but to teach her that strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting up when someone you trust pushes you. The technology we developed has evolved beyond consciousness detection. We can now help locked-in patients communicate through eye movements and brain signals. Every patient we help feels like a small victory over what my father tried to do. Sometimes reporters still call wanting to revisit the story. The judge who tried to kill his daughter has become a true crime podcast, a documentary, even a made-for-TV movie that got everything wrong. They always want to know if I've forgiven him. The truth is, forgiveness isn't the right word. I've released him. I don't carry the anger anymore because it was too heavy. But forgiveness implies restoration, and some things can't be restored. Some betrayals cut too deep. Some actions reveal a truth about someone that can't be unseen. I learnt that inheritance isn't really about money. My grandmother's $15 million sits mostly untouched in the foundation helping others. The real inheritance was understanding that love isn't guaranteed by blood, that family can be chosen, that survival is its own form of revenge. My father tried to kill me for money he thought would solve his problems. Instead, he lost everything: his freedom, his reputation, his family, and finally, his life. The decision he made that night in the hospital, thinking I couldn't hear him, started a chain of events that destroyed him completely. I survived. I thrived. I built a life filled with purpose and love, and every morning when I wake up, able to move, able to speak, able to live, I remember that I won. Not because he went to prison, but because I refused to let his betrayal define my life. If you're watching this and you've experienced betrayal from someone who should have protected you, know this: their actions reveal their character, not your worth. You deserve to be loved, to be safe, to be valued for more than what you can provide. And sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply choosing to survive when someone you trusted most wants you gone. Trust can be rebuilt, just not with the same people who broke it. Family can be found in unexpected places. And sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the catalyst for discovering exactly how strong you really are. What would you do if you discovered a loved one valued money more than your life? Have you ever had to choose between forgiveness and self-preservation? Share your thoughts below, and please like and subscribe if you believe that survival is the best revenge. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, you are worth more than anyone's greed could ever calculate.